I've spoken a bit already about the music that makes up the Books of Magra. I've talked about it in a very general way. Well, now I want to get into more detail. I want to get into the specifics of the music for the ecosystem of the Books of Magra. Now, as you've probably already seen and heard me say, that music component is very intricate and has a great deal of magnitude, has a lot of parts to it. It's not only about instruments, but it's also about architecture. And the music itself utilizes the concepts and ideas that are found in the narrative stories and in the conceptual ideas. So it's a very rich tapestry of relationship. But what is at the heart of that music? How am I creating it? How am I managing to not only create a piece, but recognize the interrelationship of those pieces while I'm writing other pieces or creating other music? There's a few elements to that. And one of the most primary, I would say, tangible ones to begin my discussion of this is to talk about my relationship with the electric guitar. This one in particular is a Parker Fly. It's from the Mojo series. It's a blue Mojo. You might not be able to tell that because, as you may have noticed, I like to shoot these videos in black and white. But this guitar I've had for well over a decade now, and by far it's been the most amazing instrument I've ever been able to play. My relationship with the electric guitar dates back to my early teens. And ever since then, it's been an ongoing evolution. I have been continually learning more and more, not only about the instrument, but my relationship to it. And certainly in creating the Books of Magra, it has taken my relationship with the electric guitar into places it probably would have never gone. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to talk about the origin relationship that I've had with the electric guitar, and then I'm going to get into how the electric guitar relates to the creation of the music and the concepts for the Books of Magra. So it was 1984. I was 11 years old. And at that time, it was still the early era of music videos, which I was very keen on. Because by then, I had a very strong interest in music. I was listening to all kinds of music. And I really loved music. And watching music videos had just amplified, to a certain degree, that interest in music. So what I would do often is I'd come home from school and watch a music video show that was on CBC. It was called Video Hits, I believe. I think it was called Video Hits. And I would race to get home so I wouldn't miss any of it. And I would see what was on. And this one day in particular, I came home, made myself a snack, sat in front of the TV, and started watching Video Hits. And it happened. I was there, innocently watching these videos when Panama by Van Halen came on. I had never seen Van Halen. At least I had no recollection of them. And I was immediately taken by Eddie Van Halen and his guitar playing and his guitar. It came out of, in a sense, it felt like it came out of nowhere because I had never shown an interest in the instrument before. But there it was. I had to play the electric guitar. The moment I saw Eddie Van Halen playing, I just was totally enamored with it. So that very night, I pleaded and bargained with my dad to get me an electric guitar. But at the time, I was playing the saxophone. And so he said, if you get good on the saxophone, I'll get you an electric guitar. And so that's what I did. I played saxophone more than I ever had, thinking about the electric guitar. And eventually my dad came through on his word, and he got me an electric guitar, my first electric guitar. And from there on out, everything was the electric guitar. Now, granted, I was still listening to all kinds of different music. Music was very, very important to me. But the electric guitar took this center positioning in my life at that point. Now, my focus for the electric guitar really stayed in the rock, prog, fusion area. But eventually it carried off into other areas as well. Because what I didn't know, which is important, very important to illustrate about myself, is what I didn't know is that my relationship with the electric guitar was not like what I was seeing going around me with other guitar players. Because what I was seeing was people, guitar players, were picking the lane of music they were in, and they were crafting everything they were doing to achieve maximum proficiency in that lane. But I wasn't doing that. I was very freely moving from one thing to another. I would delve into rock, into prog, and then I would go into jazz, and I'd learn about reggae, and I'd learn about R&B, and I even ventured into some country music at one point as well. And I just wanted to know more about the instrument. And by the time high school was coming to an end, I felt ambiguity about where I was going and what I was going to do with this thing. And then I read in a guitar magazine an interview with Frank Zappa. And he said, when he was asked about being a guitar player, he said that, well, I don't view myself as a guitar player. I view myself as a composer that plays guitar. And it just set off another great wave of personal insight, just as much as when I had discovered my desire to play the electric guitar. I'm a composer that plays guitar. And so from then, the relationship with the guitar started to shift. I started to view it more in those terms. So I didn't find myself trying to fit into any particular style of music. I became very focused on, well, what is the guitar for me as a composer? And so from high school, I went on to study music. I actually did performance studies in classical guitar because I couldn't get into music composition right away. But then eventually I did. And as I studied music composition, the guitar was there with me. I always treated it like a limb. So in essence, in a sense, I took it for granted at times, but I never felt like it was a yes or no thing. It was just always there. And as I continued to study, and then after studying music, that's a whole other story that I'm going to save for another time. The guitar was with me, but I didn't know what to do with it. Honestly, whenever I would play other forms of music, other styles of music, as much as I could appreciate them and as much as I had gained from them, I couldn't identify with them with a place in me that was looking to be expressed. And then the Books of Magra happened. Now, when it comes to the role that the electric guitar plays in the Books of Magra, it's fundamental. Like I said, it's about my relationship with the electric guitar. But my awareness of that didn't happen right away. So when the Books of Magra came into my awareness, it was more about the narratives, some of the narrative and some of the concepts and the scale of it all. And I knew that music was involved. I just didn't know how. That didn't come clear at first. And it wasn't until about 2.5 years later, that I had this moment where I was thinking about the Books of Magra. I was thinking about this ambiguity around the music. And all of a sudden, this clarity came that the music is based on my relationship with the electric guitar. And right on the heels of that came this piece of music. And it utilized electric guitar as its textural and timbral foundation. But then it grew out of that. And what was amazing about that experience is that it was very much like the first time the Books of Magra made itself present to me, was in seeing a scene and then writing it down, and the visceral experience of that. So this was very similar. I could hear and see the music and it being performed, but just like with those narratives and just like with those initiatory concepts, I knew there was more. There was more inside it. There was more around it. And it's the same thing with that first piece of music that came to me. There was more in it. There was more around it. Now, what's fundamental to the role that the guitar plays, apart from just my relationship with it, is that the tuning of the guitar is very important. There's actually 3 different tunings of the guitar, and that lays the notes and the textures and the timbres as a reference point of orientation for all of the other music. So it's not that every other piece of music is literally going to use those exact same notes, and not every piece uses the electric guitar. But the guitar and those 3 tunings are a form of orientation for all of the music, so that there's an axis of relationship, so that it not only helps me create on that scale, but it also offers a very strong explorational zeal to it all for me, because it's based on the relationship with the guitar. And a part of that is because if you have an altered tuning on the electric guitar, notes aren't in the same place as they would be with the regular tuning. And so that means that I can find relationships and sonorities and textures and colors in different ways on the electric guitar. But then I think what it also does for me is that it brings the mood and feeling that I had of my first awareness of playing the guitar when I saw Eddie Van Halen. It brings that kind of surprise and wonder and exhilaration and excitement into all of the music. And so basically, that is the role that the electric guitar plays in the Books of Magra. And the journey with that has been, as I've said a few times, very exhilarating, but it's also been full of a lot of new discoveries. And I'm sure there's going to be more as I continue to work on the whole project.